Enchanted, inaccessible, and uninhabited. Right in the center of Europe lies a truly magical mountain range. Up in the Tatra Mountains, one of the oldest forests on the continent is quietly growing. Rivers surge along, untamed. The valleys offer sanctuary for many rare animals. First and foremost, this is bear country. They are simply everywhere. Why do so many bears live up here in the Tatras and so close together? The Carpathian Mountains sprawl out over the middle of Europe. Their highest part lies between Poland and Slovakia, the Tatra Mountains. It's March. The first bears are slowly emerging from hibernation in the Ticha and Koprova Valley of the Tatra National Park. At this time of year, only the males, and females with no offspring, have already roamed down from the mountains into the forest to look for food. The others are still asleep. Winter here lasts 6 long months. This mountainous region is among the coldest places in Slovakia. But the first signs of spring are already underway. Soon the streams will be filled with meltwater. Birds are beginning to stake their territory and search for partners. In the mountain dawn, the western capercaillie is causing a bit of a scene. He wants to impress all the ladies in the neighborhood and mate with as many of them as he can. His success depends on suitable lookouts. Luckily, there are still plenty of old trees in the Ticha and Koprova valleys. A relative is courting in the undergrowth below. In contrast to the capercaillie, this hazel grouse is only looking for one partner. Later on, both the male and the female will look after their young. By early May, most of the snow above the tree line has melted. This female bear is venturing out into the daylight for the first time after 6 months in a gloomy den. And look, there's someone with her. The little one arrived back in January, only 1 pound heavy. Since then, he's had to stay in the den. Outside, with snow levels up to 1 metre high, he could hardly have survived. Everything is new to him. Bear females mostly give birth to twins, who can then play together. So with an only child, Mum has to double as a climbing frame. The bear cub is still rather insecure out and about. Its mother always has an eye on the little bear and is immediately ready to help when the cub gets stuck. This is also the first outing for the adult bear since November. She's not eaten anything for half a year, but even now, she doesn't appear to be very hungry. Mother and child don't feel at all disturbed. They're being filmed from around 600 meters away, on the other side of the wide valley. Rare footage indeed, from Central Europe. Being an only child also has some advantages. The cub doesn't have to share the mother's milk with siblings and can therefore grow faster. These two are not the only ones around. All over the slopes, bear mothers are now starting to appear with their offspring. This one has twins. Another is even having to deal with triplets. The females with bigger, more developed cubs already left their wintering dens several weeks ago. This mother gave birth 2 years ago. Side by side, they search for leftover cranberries from the autumn. This will be their last spring together. Next time, the little cub will leave her mother, who will then have new offspring to care for. Then they will have to fend for themselves. Astonishing. Within a single year, as many as 12 bear mothers with offspring were observed in the Ticha and Koprava valleys. Altogether, 40 to 50 brown bears are living in this area, which is about the size of Bristol. A population density like nowhere else in Central Europe, and which is completely absent in the Alps. So what does this wilderness have, which other regions in Europe don't? Fast-flowing streams tumble down the steep slopes of both valleys and join to form the River Bela, which runs through the national park, changing its course every year. A kingfisher has dug its breeding burrow into the escarpment of the riverbank at an alleged safe height. The layer with the offspring reaches up to 1 meter deep into the bankside. The parents fish continuously for their chicks. On the Bela River floor, these European bullheads are rather poor swimmers. But they're still difficult to catch. They normally hide between stones, and the kingfisher has to wait for them to appear again. The next attempt is also in vain. These 10-centimeter long fish have developed a cunning trick to make themselves virtually invisible. Bullheads can adapt their color to the riverbed. Within seconds, they change from dark to light. When the fish move, however, they can be seen. The kingfisher kills one before bringing it back to the chicks at the nest. Another enemy of the bullheads lives by the river, the otter. He can even get to the fish in their hiding places by just flipping the stones over and snapping up the surprised bullheads. Black storks and grey herons use another strategy to hunt around the rocky banks of the Bela. With their long legs, they simply wait in the water until the fish emerge. Not always with great success. The river Bela is full of fish. But it takes a lot of these ones to fill yourself up. For the bears, catching fish as small as that just isn't worth it. Salmon, like those caught by brown bears in other parts of the world, are not found in the Bela. The bear female and her cub from the previous year are travelling through on the search for better feeding grounds. She knows from experience exactly where to go for food at which time of year. Early summer draws all the bears up from both valleys and onto the mountain pastures. There they can find fresh grass and nourishing herbs, the bears' staple summer diet. The hardest time of year for the bear mothers is starting right now. The cubs are growing fast, but are still not eating much solid food, so they need even more of the high-fat milk. It really takes it out of the females. Despite constant grazing, they keep losing weight. They still need to be alert, however. In bear country, other hungry predators are on the prowl. But usually, wolves don't dare to approach a female bear with offspring. Adolescent bears, who've already left their mothers, are in greater danger. Their biggest enemies are members of their own species. For male bears, the most critical phase of their lives is now beginning. Fully grown animals, like this colossus, feel threatened by these potential future competitors. While younger females tend to stay within the territory of their mothers, young males head further afield and risk crossing paths with older bears. This young male doesn't yet recognize the danger of the situation. The older bear has been following the youngster's tracks for a long while. Simply chasing the cub away is usually not enough for him. Such encounters often end in tragedy. This young male has had his spine broken. The two valleys are his patch, and so he also claims all the females in the area for himself. For years, he's been the strongest man around here. Females have therefore been happy to accept him as a father for their offspring. Sometimes they hang around with him for a few days, eating grass together, like cattle to pasture. Every bear female instinctively knows that if they don't mate with him, he'll kill their offspring from another male the following year. He has an incredible memory for exactly which female he bred with in the previous year. Such is life in bear country since time immemorial. The rules are as old as the venerable Swiss pine. The pine forests of the Ticha and Koprava valleys are among the oldest in Europe. Many trees are over 500 years old, some even 1,000. These ancient trees cut pretty disheveled figures. Their tips have gone dead, while the side branches continue to hold needles. They've been cleared in almost all regions due to their hard wood, and are rare these days. Swiss pines can withstand temperatures down to -40 degrees, so they're well equipped for life in the high mountains, with all its challenges. Yet severe storms at this altitude can break even the strongest trees. Many pines grow on the bare rock. The soil, with its nutrients, has been washed down into the valley long ago by the rain. The roots clutch the stones, penetrating even the smallest cracks and anchoring the trees to the rocky surface. Old pines are often hollow inside. Here the wood is already decayed, while the tree continues to live and grow. That's an advantage for the pine. The nutrients from the center of the trunk move down into the ground, where they can be reabsorbed by the roots. That's how the Swiss pine can regenerate itself, growing on for many centuries in the barren environment. A storm is brewing. The heavens open. More rain falls over the Tatra Mountains than the rest of Slovakia. All the water that falls over the two valleys runs into the river Bela. This time, the rain is falling for 4 or 5 days without a break. Even here, that only occurs once a decade. The small mountain stream quickly turns into a rushing torrent. It flows well over the banks. Uprooting trees. It doesn't help that they're deeply rooted. The normally peaceful river has developed a destructive force, softening the earth until the hillside begins to slip. Giant trees drift away like children's toys. The water level has almost reached the kingfisher's breeding burrow, so the parents can hardly get to the chicks inside anymore. If the water continues to swell, the burrow will be lost. Then, finally, the rain stops. The forest is still submerged. Miraculously, the young kingfisher, recognizable by his short beak, has escaped the flood. His parents will provide food for a few more days. Then he'll have to learn to fish for himself. Others are not so fortunate. The hazel grouse has lost her offspring. 8 chicks hatched before their mother led them into the forest to look for food. Now the youngsters have been swept away somewhere. Both parents are searching for them. They hear a pitiful chirping coming from the undergrowth. One chick has survived. The mother calls back. When they finally find each other, his mother takes the surviving chick to new feeding grounds in order to quickly rebuild his strength. Storms cause lasting damage to the forest. It will take decades for the uprooted trunks to completely decay. The force of the wind has ripped giant holes in the tree cover. Creating clearances which are popular with the brown bears. The storm has provided them with new food sources. Sweet blueberries grow in abundance here, much more nutritious than only eating grass the whole summer long. For the bears, the toppled trunks are not an obstacle, but rather a walkway through the forest. For other animals, a steep slope covered with fallen trees is much more difficult to overcome. With his long legs, this deer has got himself tangled up in the debris of the ravaged forest and has slipped. In the process, he's broken his leg. He's still eating. But his strength has been sapped a long time ago. The next morning, eagles are circling the dead animal. He's been discovered by a female bear. In full health, the deer would have easily been able to see her off. But now the carcass of the old animal is providing the bear and her offspring with vital food resources for the coming winter. So the bears not only profit from the blueberries, but also other after effects of the storm. The body also attracts other inquiries. As soon as the bears have had their fill, a young fox wanders in. He's pricked up his ears and is distracted. He's afraid of aerial attacks. Eagles can also prey upon young foxes. When one of them settles onto a nearby tree, the fox decides to clear off. Thus, a whole range of predators profits from the stag's misfortune. The destructive power of the storm also turns out to be a productive one, sometimes also a rejuvenating cure. The river has once again changed course, and new sandbanks full of fallen trees have been created all over. For the brown trout, they pose no obstacle. In fact, quite the opposite. The fish like to draw back to the protection of the trunks from the open water. Especially when otters are on the hunt. Graylings also hide in the undergrowth from the otters, who now have a more difficult job. But there's always a place for a quick rest between the washed-up wood on the sandbank. The debris-strewn surfaces are quickly inhabited. Many plant species need open, sunlit places. Some only thrive up in the rocky ground of the mountains, or else down here on the fresh, stony surfaces of the valleys. The flooding has expanded their territory. Something for the rare German tamarisk. It depends heavily on light, but is easily overgrown by larger plants. It can only survive in the long term in places where new sandbanks constantly emerge. They're the favourite hunting grounds of an extremely adept sprinter, the tiger beetle. With his hefty front incisors, he's the velociraptor of beetles. Running after his prey, exactly like the agile dinosaur. Or springing into action to grab another insect. He pierces his prey through the exoskeleton, then sucks it dry. Since the tiger beetle is always on the move, he needs a lot of energy, and therefore victims, hunted and consumed on the sands. In summer, there's enough quarry to be found by the River Bela. Common sandpipers also pick at insects and their larvae. The stony ground is the bird's nursery. Right after hatching, the chicks have to find their own food. And if it gets too cold, he just crawls under a parental wing. Just days after the flooding, the reforestation of the new sandbanks is beginning. Here the air is filled not with insects, but with willow seed. Over densely grown areas, the germ buds have no chance. But where there's enough light, the young trees can grow up to a metre within a single year. After a few years, a thick willow grove has emerged on the new sandbank. The fresh, lush foliage attracts red deer to the river. Young and old alike graze away on the willow. Caution counts around the riverside, however. And not only because of the current. The wet, slippery stones make life difficult for the deer. With their smooth hooves, they can easily slip or get wedged in the rocks. That's why wolves like to hunt around the banks. The deer know the dangers. But they don't have to worry about this one. His belly is already well filled. And that's exactly what the cubs in the forest are waiting for. After a good 3 weeks, they leave the den for the first time and eat solid food. Meanwhile, they're about 3 months old. The adult will regurgitate chunks of meat for them after returning from his hunt. Young wolves are dependent on their parents for 2 years before they become successful hunters themselves. Now they welcome the returning adult impatiently, as these rare images from the family life of wild wolves show. Around 50 wolves live in 7 packs in the wilderness of the Tatra National Park. In August, mornings are already bringing mist to the forests of the Ticha and Koprava valleys. The days, however, are still long and warm. Towards the end of the summer, the cones of the Swiss pines ripen. Sometimes as many as 100 nuts are sheltered under the scales of one pine cone. 70% fat, 20% protein. The nuts are extremely nourishing. The spotted nutcracker knows this only too well. The nutcracker lives up to its name by using its powerful beak. He works away as if using a chisel, turning over individual scales or else flying off with an entire cone. Even the Swiss pines of the Tatra Mountains only grow in certain areas, so spotted nutcrackers gather here from all over. They live rather secretively the whole year round, eating insects, birds' eggs, and the seeds of other plants. But they can hardly get enough of the fat-rich Swiss pine nuts, devouring one after another. Sometimes they miss a few, and so the nutcrackers open the door for other animals. And the coal tit can get to the fatty seeds. And the squirrels also have an easier job. Even the brown bears can't ignore the treetop turmoil. The forest floor is full of sweet blueberries, but the bear now has the pines in sight. Those few nuts that the nutcracker has dropped are not enough for a bear, of course. Better than waiting for gifts from above is climbing up for a closer look himself. A true balancing act. Wherever one looks, there are bears perched in the pines. At times, a 250-kilo bear will be swaying 20 meters above the ground, all for a few fatty nuts. "20 bears together have been observed up in the trees, over a surface of only 2 square kilometers. Their territories do overlap, but when there's enough to eat, they steer clear of each other. This is extraordinary behavior for European brown bears, only known and filmed right here. For 3 weeks long, the bears harvest the fat-rich food. It's an important time for them when they have to concentrate on bulking up for the winter. And the pines are yet another reason why so many of them can survive here. The spotted nutcracker pecks at nut after nut. But simply taking on fat deposits immediately is not the only survival strategy employed by the birds for the cold season. They transport dozens of seeds in their throat pouches to lay down in the forest as reserve supplies. A single nutcracker hides tens of thousands of pine nuts in autumn. An incredible feat, especially of the memory. Even when there's a meter of snow lying in winter, the birds purposefully dig a tunnel down to their supply store. They often hide the nuts in places where no trees are growing. The heavy seeds would never reach these places unaided. Amazingly, they managed to find 80% of the nuts again. New pines germinate from the rest left behind. In this way, the nutcrackers are also the horticulturalists of the pine forest, making sure that the rare trees are well distributed once again. A cooperation of tree and bird from which both can profit. And which is also to the advantage of the bears. Thus they too can have their fill of food in the coming years. When the pine trees have been fully harvested, they get stuck back into the blueberries and cranberries. Every calorie counts now. For most of the year, the big predators are vegetarians. Autumn arrives, rapidly bringing cooler temperatures to the Tatra Mountains. In September, a blanket of mist shrouds the valleys. And swarms of guests fly in from northern Europe. Rowan berries are now ripening in the mountain forests. Field fairs come in their hundreds and thousands for the red fruit, which hangs from the rowan trees. The berries are not only sweet, but often fermented, only making them more attractive to the field fairs. Providing these birds with energy-rich food is also a mutually beneficial deal. The field fairs harvest the trees, and when they've finished one off, they keep on going, tree to tree and valley to valley. By doing so, they scatter the mountains and forests with seed bombs. Their droppings contain the leftovers of the digested fruit. New rowans will germinate in these places the following year, and if there's enough light, they will also grow. In this way, the field fairs disseminate huge numbers of new trees every year, distributing the rowan berries in places where there's no forest. So they're also landscape gardeners, especially in places where storms have destroyed areas of old forest. Under the protection of the quickly sprouting rowans, pine seedlings grow in turn. After 50 to 100 years, the pines are bigger than the rowans which were germinated by the field fairs. The mountain pine forest is back. A cycle of constant renewal in the valleys of the Tatras has come round again. Destruction has laid the foundations for regeneration. From October, the first snow dusts the slopes, and the bears head up to their winter quarters. A last morsel before they withdraw to their dens to wait out the cold season. They'll doze for months, living off fat reserves built up over the summer. Temperatures quickly become icy. -30 degrees is not unheard of in the Tatra Mountains. Snow often lies over a metre deep. While the bears retreat up to their mountain dens, the red deer wander down into the valley, where it's easier to find food. Further down, the grass isn't as covered with snow. The weak ones will either starve or be taken as prey. This one fell victim to wolves. And now a fox reaps the benefits. A few berries and seeds still hang from the bushes, helping to get bullfinches and hazel grouse through the winter. The river Bela steams. Compared to the icy air, the water is warm at 0 degrees. Only in calm areas does the water freeze over. The river is still largely free of ice, luckily for the otters. Even in winter, they have to remain active the whole day long to catch bullheads and other small fish. Despite their thick fur, these feisty creatures lose a lot of body heat hunting in the ice-cold water, so they still need up to 1 kilo of food every day. Winter now has the Ticha and Koprova valleys firmly in its grasp. While all the other animals must keep searching or hunting for food in the forests to survive the winter, the bears' year has come to an end. They're asleep, hidden in their dens. There, the females will bring new offspring into the world from January, who'll help to repopulate the mountain slopes from May onwards. Nowhere in Central Europe are there so many bears as here. The reasons are varied. They can live mostly undisturbed in the national park and can find everything that they need. They've even conquered the treetops. The valleys are protected from the peaks to the lowlands, and natural cycles can take their course, as they have done for thousands of years. Layers to hibernate and give birth to offspring. Feeding grounds with energy-rich supplies the whole year round. Such wild and uninhabited places right at the centre of Europe can virtually only still be found here, in the Ticha Valley and Koprova Valley of the Tatra Mountains. The peaks of the Tatra Mountains. This is the kingdom of the Tatra Chamois, islands in a hazy sea of cloud. Conditions are extreme at these heights, where no trees are growing, a borderland of snow and ice, where 2 survival specialists have thrived since the Ice Age. Other animals only arrived here later from lower-lying regions. Each one braves the mountainous world in its own way. Even in sunshine, everyone in this wilderness above the clouds lives in constant danger. Up here, everyone's a survivor. This is their story. The Carpathian Mountains stretch out across the centre of Europe. Their highest part lies between Poland and Slovakia, the Tatras, the smallest high mountain range in the world. Over 20 peaks more than 2,500 metres high cover an area of only 20 by 30 kilometres across. One of the mountains is Krivan, a national symbol of Slovakia, whose name means bent or crooked. It lies in the middle of the Tatra National Park and is home to a crooked-horned Tatra native, the Tatra Chamois, an animal with a special history. Chamois are best equipped for life in the high peaks. During the last ice age, they wandered to Central Europe, along with reindeer and musk oxen, when the continent was still largely frozen. When the glaciers melted, the reindeers and musk oxen disappeared with them. Only the chamois remained, since the ice age continued at the higher altitudes. These expert climbers sustained themselves in the coldest mountain regions of Europe, the Alps or the Carpathians. Isolated from each other, they continued to evolve. Today, the Tatra chamois forms its own subspecies. In the Tatra Mountains, the chamois are the only large animals that live the whole year round above the tree line. Winter has lasted for 6 months up here. In late May or early June, the females withdraw to a peaceful spot where, after a 6-month gestation period, they give birth to 1, or less commonly 2 or 3 kids. The offspring tag along behind their mother just hours after birth. Even in this rough terrain, a kid will be suckled for 3 months, during which time they stick closely to the milk source. Only when the mother is grazing do they take a rest, lying down on the slopes. There's so much to discover. On one of the last remaining snowfields, a Tatra marmot appears out of its den, another Ice Age remnant. Back then, they also lived down in the lowlands. Today, only the mountain tops can provide the cold temperatures they like. While the chamois are active the whole year round, marmots hibernate for 6 or 7 months, living off fat reserves. Recently awake, the first job is to cushion their dens with new grass to make them comfortable for the newly arrived offspring. What chamois and marmots have in common is their history. Both found refuge here in the Tatra Mountains after the Ice Age, like castaways on a cold island in the warm sea. After the glaciers receded, other species colonized the mountains. Animals that are not exactly perfectly suited to the giddy heights. Brown bears can climb, just not as elegantly as the chamois. Also foxes and wolves. Red deer and Eurasian lynx are faced with different challenges up here than in the low-lying areas. The mountain lakes of the Tatras also attract some unexpected visitors at 2,000 meters altitude. When the ice begins to melt, some unusual ramblers are taking a romantic stroll. Until recently, these grass frogs were comfortably buried in the ground away from the frost or hidden in earthy dens. It's surprising that they're living up this high. Their body temperatures depend on their surroundings, and it's much colder here all year round than down in the valley. The lake water is only a little above 0 degrees. But the frogs get started right away with their mating ritual. After all, it's not going to get much warmer. Often, several males attach themselves to a sweetheart. All females try to lay their gelatinous mass of eggs at the lake's edge. Hundreds of frogs cluster together. It's flatter here, and the temperatures are more comfortable compared to the middle of the lake. An advantage for the tadpoles. They can grow faster and leave the lake as small frogs in good time before the early winter season. Even after the last ice has melted, the temperature in the lake never climbs above 4 degrees. Water, either in the form of snow and ice or as a liquid, characterizes the Tatra Mountains. Rocky cliffs plummet down into the valley. And canyons jut into the stony surface. Hollows and step-like cascades provide the perfect hunting ground for the white-throated dipper. They can find plenty of insects and larvae here the whole year round. Because the streams are so steep and fast, they don't freeze easily. Over the millennia, these fast-flowing streams have fashioned nesting places for the birds into the rocks. As soon as the chicks have been served, the dipper has to head off again in search of more provisions. Their favourite food is caddisfly larvae. These live in tubular receptacles made by sticking sand grains together. They protect the larvae from many predators and make them heavier, so that the current can't just wash them away. The whole stream is full of them. When a white-throated dipper snaps up one of the larvae, it first has to knock it out of its protective container. Sometimes they pick up other insects along the way and bring an entire beakful back to the nest. Gradually, the days get longer. The sun now sets earlier behind Tatra Mountain. Within a fortnight, all the female chamois have had their kids. Just a week after the birth, the mothers gather in kindergarten groups, looking after the offspring together. They really do help each other out. This aunt is busy suckling a whole herd, mostly the offspring of other females, while the off-duty mums get some rest. In the event of a female dying, others even adopt her offspring. The youngsters are bursting with energy from their feast. Even now, they can jump up over 2 meters high in the air. Footage like this is only possible when the chamois feel undisturbed. The does are highly alert when the kids are still young. They can see, smell and hear very well. But sometimes they just like to join in the fun. On the next slope, the yearlings are playing. Adolescent chamois born last summer. The ability to move quickly and securely in this terrain is a vital survival skill. The time as a young kid is the most dangerous period in the whole life of a chamois. Only half of them survive to the following year. Bears are too cumbersome to catch these swift animals. They're well aware of that and mostly just feed on grass in the summer. Lynx prepare ambushes under cover and can even take down adult chamois. They kill their victims by strangulation. This lasts for several minutes, so clinging onto a chamois around here is too dangerous for the big cat. They'd be risking a bad fall. The biggest threat to the youngsters comes from the air. Golden eagles like preying on the young chamois. These birds of prey rely on the kids for about a third of their food intake. As soon as the eagle has set off, being carried up on warm air currents to save energy, the warning cries begin. A marmot has noticed the bird. The chamois does gather round the kids. As the eagle continues to approach, they make off. The bird of prey tries to create panic among the chamois to then swoop down on a youngster, making it stumble and fall down the slope. This attack is unsuccessful, however, and the herd quickly settles down again. Summer sun warms the slopes of the Tatras, to the advantage of not only the eagles. The updrafts help to bring other species into the high mountains, those who wouldn't even manage it under their own steam. Millions of insects are thrust upwards by the wind. As small as they appear, the redistribution of this biomass has a major effect. The insects land on meadows, but also on snowfields, where they are highly visible. This water pipit simply has to pick them up, as if from a white tablecloth. Even the chamois benefit from the wind-wafted insect hordes. They're digested, then excreted over the meadows by the pipits, fertilizing the ground with nutritious dung. The result? Grass, flowers, and herbs. Such lush, juicy grass only appears up here for 4 months, so the chamois and marmots enjoy this warm season to the fullest. Their winter fur hangs off the chamois in clumps. Yet winter can always creep back into the mountains at any time of year. Then the snow falls, even in June. These marmots only awoke from hibernation a few days ago. And they're hungry, very hungry. After all, they've lost 1/3 of their body weight. They need 1.5 kilos of grass and herbs per day in order to build up fat reserves again for the coming winter. A few days like this don't concern them, however. Right from birth, they've been equipped for Arctic conditions. Besides, compared to the icy winter temperatures, it is now positively mild. The chamois certainly don't mind this little bit of snow either. Older animals paw patches of grass clear, while the youngsters continue to suckle with their mothers. Only if the weather was to continue like this for several weeks would things get bad for the marmots and chamois. Further down in the valley, the streams are still flowing, but they're shallow enough for 2 species of fish. Brown trout like to inhabit such fast-flowing waters. To conserve energy, they use the slipstream behind roots and boulders, while European bullheads crouch on the river floor. They're poor swimmers and let the bubbling water churn over them. The streamlined trout fishtail against the current, even understanding how to exploit the water turbulence to save energy. Life in and around the mountain streams requires cunning strategies, and not only for fish. Like the alpine meadowgrass, which develops bulbils instead of blossoms, from which secondary grass grows. When the bulbils get heavier, the mother stems bend downwards and actually plant the young offshoots in the ground until they've put down roots and can't be swept away by the current. With this method, the plants can prevent seeds drifting off and being washed up in unsuitable places. It's now midsummer in the Tatra Mountains, and life is good for the deer. Plenty of vegetation and comfortable temperatures, up to around 20 degrees. Although perfect for deer, this is too warm for the true high mountain animals. So even the chamois take a little drink to cool off. They graze early in the morning. Then they don't have to move around a lot during the day and can keep their body temperatures from rising much higher. Sometimes the last snowfields can provide some relief. A snowy cushion for whole body cooling. In summer, the numerous bears of the Tatra Mountains are always in the places with the freshest grass. But they also don't have any objection to a bit of cooling ice right now. And those who can't find any spots of remaining snow to offset the warm summer days can simply retreat to the shade of a cave. Down in the valley, the mountain streams have joined up at the River Bela, which is full of sandbanks. It's mostly so shallow that the water is now warmed to around 10 degrees. Besides the brown trout, graylings also live here, with their fan-like extended dorsal fins. They also like things a little warmer. Graylings can grow up to ½ a metre long and hunt insects and their larvae, but also small fish. Summer is also breeding season, and the Bela teems with a variety of young fish. They like to gather in shallow water. It's warmer there, so they can grow faster. In the deep parts, trout are also lurking. In summer, there's an abundance of life. Above, as well as below, the waterline, shrimps and insect larvae attach themselves to the rocks in the current. Mayfly larvae are among the most common inhabitants of the River Bela. They feed on dead plant life and algae. They also get stuck into dead fish, however. Adult mayflies really do only live for a few hours or days, with the single goal of procreation. But the trout are skilled hunters and snatch many mayflies from the air. Grey wagtails only have to peck insects from the water surface. They're so numerous that the birds fly back to their nests with beaks brimming. Towards evening, when the caddisflies start out, the air above the river starts to get crowded. On summer nights like this, a strange event takes place: the transformation of one of the biggest water-based predatory insects. For several years, stonefly larvae, up to 5 centimeters long, have preyed on other insects. Now they're clambering out of the water at their final ever molting. The shell breaks open, and the completed animal fights its way out, completely missing the pupal stage of many other insects. From its protective husk, a delicate aerial creature emerges, fed by fat reserves gathered while in the larvae stage. Large adult stoneflies live from 4 to 6 weeks to mate and lay eggs. The larvae husks remind one of their predatory past, clinging like brooches to the stone surface. From September onwards, the roars of the red deer ring through the smallest high mountain range in the world. The high point of their year is about to begin. While the male deer have spent the summer mostly hidden in forests, they now gather above the tree line. They need space for their rutting. They make themselves heard the whole day through. They want to attract females and frighten off competitors. In contrast to their would-be partners, the males have to make quite an effort. The hinds can have offspring every year. Males, on the other hand, only get the chance to sire children when they're in their prime, between 10 and 12 years and in full strength. They have to prevail over the other males to conquer a herd like this. The females are not in competition with each other, however. Younger, weaker stags only get a look in if the dominant male isn't vigilant. But this alpha animal drives this hoodlum away from his women. The young stag will have to wait for a few years before he's ready to win his own herd. He may only get the chance once in his entire life, in a single year. That's why red deer are so prepared to take big risks. Sometimes a threat is all that's needed for one to give up. But if two equally strong males meet, a fight breaks out. It boils down to the ultimate success in the life of a stag, who gets to hand his genes down to the next generation. In contrast to the lowlands, clashes in the high mountain areas are especially dangerous. It's a very steep slope. Heavy animals like the red deer can hardly stop themselves once they start to slip down. The dominant male wins. The offspring born to the females the following year will be his. So the exhausting rutting was worth it. Even if he lost a quarter of his body weight. He also gave his all, but he wasted the chance. The fight on the edge of the abyss has cost him his life. But his death will allow others to survive. The cadaver attracts a female bear with her young. In autumn, they normally live mostly on blueberries and cranberries. This dead deer offers not only some variety, but an easy opportunity to put on some winter fat. When the cold season arrives, they'll retreat to their dens to hibernate, and so they need enough resources to get them through. Even for the bears, this is too big a feast to manage alone. Soon nothing will be left of the unlucky mountain combatant. Autumn is coming, and the grass on the slopes is turning golden, almost like the yellowish-brown summer coats of the chamois. They'll stay in the mountains in winter, just like the marmots. Now they start heading back to their dens. Each one has taken on around 1.5 kilos of extra fat for the cold months. As early as October, the first snow falls, which will cover wide areas of the Tatra Mountains for half a year. The deer wander down into the valley where the snow isn't as high. So the peaks once again belong to the chamois. As soon as the frost begins, however, these mountain dwellers get down to business. Mating season begins. This shaking is already part of the trial of strength. They plump up the manes on their backs to make themselves look bigger. This is the first round in the bucks' conflict. A test with consequences. Whoever has the larger mane appears more powerful. If neither comes out clearly on top, the second round begins. A frantic chase at speeds of up to 50 kilometers an hour. Thanks to their spreadable hooves with soles like hard rubber, the chamois are sure-footed. In order to save breath, chamois have more red blood cells than other animals, helping to absorb more oxygen. Both animals run until they're worn out. The one standing highest up at the end wins the contest. They can normally avoid the third round, which is a direct fight. Nonetheless, the winner has to stay alert. The females are only fertile for a few hours, so he constantly checks whether one of them is ready to mate. Even chamois sometimes put a foot wrong and break a leg. An easy job for a lynx. Around 15 of the rare cats live in the Tatra National Park. When they've killed some prey, they don't eat it all at once, but rather eat what they want and then store the leftovers. These are dragged into a cave, then the lynx keeps popping back to its cold store until the whole chamois has been polished off. It's a female, and she's not alone. A second lynx says hello, before being joined by two others. A whole family. It's a mother with 3 almost fully grown offspring. Rare footage of these shy predators in their natural habitat. One lynx after the other eats its fill inside the cave, while the others play outside. Next year, the young cats will leave their mother to head out alone in the Tatra Mountains. The ridges of Krivan Mountain are covered in snow. Down in the valley, the river Bela has still not iced over, despite the severe frost. Luckily for the white-throated dipper, they need open water to survive. But there is some ice in the river, down on the bed. Free-floating ice crystals get frozen to the ground, then start growing upwards as icebergs, an unusual phenomenon. Normally, ice freezes from top to bottom. Water is heaviest at a temperature of 4 degrees and sinks downwards. That's how fish and other aquatic creatures can survive in frozen lakes, only if they're deep enough. The current in the river is strong. And has many deep points like this one, offering plenty of areas for the dippers to go diving. They can hunt for caddisfly larvae the whole winter through. And even if it gets icier, this diving zone in the Tatra Mountains will remain for these rare birds. In the shadow of Krivan, the temperature sometimes sinks as low as -30 degrees. For many creatures, a death zone. But the chamois are tough. They search for places as sheltered from the wind as possible. Then they scrape a few blades of grass clear and simply wait for the storm to pass. They've also developed certain astonishing adaptive strategies. To save energy, they can even lower their body temperatures. As the winter wears on, the snow cover gets thicker and thicker. Old, wise females always know where there's something to eat, however. They lead and the herd follows. The chamois are now constantly active during the day to find enough food. Taking breaks, like in summer, is not an option anymore. Often enough, this means walking through deep snow. Their thick winter coats protect them from the cold. It warms up quickly in the sun, being dark-coloured. The chamois stay in one place until they've eaten everything on offer, before heading off again. At the start of the year, these hikes become more and more dangerous. Now the group has to walk beneath a snow slab. The experienced doe knows the risk and hesitates. Wherever the sun shines on the snow, things can easily start to slip, and a great drama unfolds. This avalanche takes a large number of the herd with it. The chamois suffocate under a metre-thick snow load. Later on, ravens find a few remains on the surface. A fox chases a raven away from the chamois leg. Then he suddenly disappears into the snow. With their excellent sense of smell, the foxes have tracked the dead chamois through the snow. And now these crafty tunnel diggers are not interested in sharing with anyone else. No matter what the weather, the foxes are active for days. They dig one tunnel after another, up to the dead chamois, which is lying around 2 meters deep in the snow. An activity which has never before been captured on film. The avalanche site is like an enormous freezer whose contents can get the foxes through the winter. Bit by bit, they gather up the remains of the chamois to secure the best offcuts for themselves. Yet the food store lies open, and its scent attracts 2 wolves at night time. They make use of the fox's tunnels, extending them. This is much easier than digging for themselves or even hunting. At dawn, the wolves disappear with full stomachs. They've profited from others' misfortune, a constant narrative in the Tatra Mountains since the Ice Age. In the smallest high mountain range on Earth, the Tatra chamois have lived on despite the extreme conditions, predators, freezing cold, and avalanches. Poachers, however, brought them to the brink of extinction by the turn of the millennium. Since then, the chamois have increased in number again, from 200 to 1,500, thanks to strict protection. The Tatra National Park is their safe haven.